I'm Jeanne Fiorini. Thanks for joining the Tarot Tips. This week we're going to talk about something that's a serious matter, and that is when people ask, or when you ask, health questions to the tarot. We really have to be very, very careful here. And I don't know whether it's because it's such a tangible area of questioning, or whether it's because there's a lot at stake, but you cannot overstep your boundaries when clients ask you about health questions. It's important to make sure that you're honest about your reactions, but it's not our place as readers to be giving medical advice. If something comes up that concerns me, I would say to someone something like, when was the last time you had a physical? Or have you had any things that have been bothering you lately? Do you intuitively feel like something might be off with you in terms of your health? Questions such as that. You know, you can't, I think it's many of us have had the experience of leaving a reading being scared out of our wits. And that really doesn't serve anybody. Our purpose is to be conduits for information and helpful guidance for people. And sometimes you do run into situations where maybe the function of the reading is to say to somebody, you need to make sure that you tend to your physical health. If you've got a pain, you need to address that. Sometimes these things do come up in readings and we have to take them seriously. But you have to be very, very careful about how you phrase your reply or your response to the cards, and remember your role is as a tarot reader and not as a diagnostician or as somebody really to give medical advice. It's, I think, within the parameters of what we're doing to make suggestions about getting things checked out, to follow through on things, to not let something get shoved under the rug. But I'd like to go through a couple of cards, I think there's 7 over on the tarot table, that for me over time have been consistent cards when that point or connote certain physical issues when we're talking about health issues. So I'd like to go over to the tarot over to the table and talk about a few of those. First card in our line of cards here that can be very indicative of something that has to do in general with health issues being an issue is the Strength card. Now, keep in mind that all of these cards are speaking to these particular health issues, at least in my experience, when we've addressed health as an issue. So even though all cards have so many different sides, if the issue is health, these are things that sometimes can be relevant. These are ideas that can be relevant if this card comes up and health issues are the question. So the Strength card does show somebody who's having a struggle. We see the dynamic wrestling with the life force there. So very many times the Strength card can indicate where the personality and their life force are trying to regain a balance of some kind. The next card we can talk about, we'll do it that way, is the Four of Pentacles. Now, because this card shows somebody who's hanging on to things pretty tightly, sometimes this can indicate physical symptoms such as arthritis, rheumatism, that sort of clenching feeling, muscle aches. Sometimes if you take the posture that's on the card, you can get a sense of how it might feel to be holding that position. So the Four of Pentacles as a card of resistance can show that difficulty in movement. So again, pointing toward joint issues, muscle issues, arthritis in particular. We'll do that. The High Priestess. Now this is an interesting one to me, and the first time it came to me about what this card might mean in terms of health, in some ways it was sort of startling, but it has to do with those two pillars, the black and the white pillar, bipolar, two poles, two pillars. Sometimes this does indicate somebody who inside of themselves vacillates in a very wide swing between the extremes, between the black and the white. Sometimes this can indicate somebody with bipolar issues. Bipolar. Three of Swords. I've had the actual experience of telling or suggesting that a woman go and get her blood pressure checked after seeing this card. I think this one is somewhat obvious. We see that heart pierced by swords. So this can be about heart issues, things like high blood pressure, stroke, heart attack, things that have to do with the blood vessels, things that have to do with there being extremes in those kinds of areas within a person's body. Now, I would never say to somebody, oh, I think you're going to have a heart attack. I would say to somebody, I really don't like the looks of this card. How have you been feeling? And when was the last time you saw a doctor? That kind of thing. Because we don't really know. The best we can do is react intuitively to the card. But that is a card that shows that something needs to be addressed. The other thing about that card in regards to health is that it's a card of taking away denial and illusions. So if there is any issue that a person has shoved under the rug or has disregarded or not paid attention to, the Three of Swords would say, well, we know you don't really want to know what's going on, but it needs to be addressed. So kind of bite the bullet, face the facts, and deal with what's on the table for you. Okay, Seven of Cups. When we get into the cups, then we're into things that are watery. So things that have to do with digestion sometimes. Sometimes the cups in particular have to do with women's issues, uterine issues, reproductive issues. That Seven of Cups can lean me a little bit into the does cancer run in your family, that kind of thing, especially if it's backed up by the King of Cups, a personality card that's ruled by the astrological sign of Cancer. So if I see those two things and somebody is asking a health question, I'm going to say something like, do you have a family history of cancer? Do you do what you need to do to get yourself checked out regularly? Etc. The last one is a little humorous, is the Ten of Wands. Now, it's easy to look at that card. If you were to take the posture of that card, you would immediately get a backache or an ache at the very the base of your neck. So sometimes that can be specifically about backaches. But I've also seen this card come up to mean quitting smoking. If you think of the wands as fire sticks, and there's 10 wands, I think there's still 20 cigarettes in a packet. So there's some synchronicities there. Sometimes the 10 of wands would be like, okay, it's time to give up something. So I might ask somebody if they were a smoker. I would also ask them what do they feel like they don't want to do anymore? What are they carrying around that it's time to let go of? So the Ten of Wands being specifically about neck and back issues, but also about what is it time to stop doing? You know, I need to stop drinking. I need to stop getting only 4 hours of sleep, whatever it is. Those are just a few examples of the ways that the tarot can communicate visually, as well as by what the card means, and help us become better informed about our physical health and the well-being of others. Let me make the point again. You have to be very careful of your boundaries here. You have to be very careful of how you communicate whatever information or impressions you're receiving. And don't assume a role that really isn't yours to take on. But I have seen some very useful things happen in regards to addressing health issues at the tarot table. So it is a place where we have to be very careful, but also a place where we can really do some good work. So keep your eyes and ears open for those sorts of things, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in.